残酷な天使のように少年よ神話になれ
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Atcast. It's a semi-regular, ill-defined podcast for the study of modern visual culture. Back at it again at the Krispy Kreme, it's your boy Soup.
Why Krispy Kreme?
Have you never seen the Krispy Kreme vine?
No.
Oh my god, Renu, you are missing out on an important part of internet culture.
Clearly. Well, it's me, Renu, the return of the best Kira Kira Aidoru. Not on Love Live.
Sure, this is a non-Love Live podcast.
Oh, we just lost like 100% of our viewers.
Okay. I should clarify. We don't watch Love Live, or I don't at least.
Yeah,
I don't think you do
I know
either.
plenty of people who like play it and love it and make merch and everything. But
I mean, I played it for like a solid 20 minutes.
Okay.
I like the rhythm game aspect, and I'm a sucker for gacha games, but I just can't get into idol stuff.
You just need to find your one true waifu. That's what they always say.
I'm sure that's what it is. And I'm sure if I find a waifu, it's not going to be amongst the like smattering of literal children that is Love Live, but probably amongst like honestly, I get the feeling that I'm more of like an idol master than I am a Love Live. Okay, but that's aside from the point.
Mm-hmm.
Even moving past that tangent, before we talk about like what we're doing this episode, I got beef. We got beef.
Whatever could be the problem.
Okay, we've got beef about Hisone to Masatan.
You've got beef.
I've got beef, and I've got beef with you for not having beef. Because you still don't think that it's like a gross fetish piece.
I just think your reaction to it is really funny, so I have to keep us watching it.
Okay, the animation is great.
Yeah.
It's a funny show.
Yeah.
It's charming. I just hate that they fucking eat these people. I don't like that part. Because it's episode 3. One of the other girls is just like, yeah, eat me, and then she gets like half eaten, and she's like, I like this.
Yeah,
I hate that so much.
I was on board for it and like not really caring about the whole like eating thing up until that point where like that one girl got swallowed and then she started like blushing like mad and like seemed to really really enjoy it. And I don't know, I was like, okay.
I hate it. Like, because they introduce some like things in the show where they're just like, yes, if you're a good pilot, you don't disturb the insides of the creature. But then we have to watch the pilot who disturbs the insides of the creature, and she just like squishes all over the place, and it's gross, and it makes all these squishy noises, and I fucking hate it.
You don't like squishy dragon insides?
No, that's the thing that I hate in the world the most right at this very moment.
I bet you never thought it would come to this.
I tried to describe this anime to someone, or I've described it to multiple people, and they've all just been like, what the fuck? Which is a valid reaction.
I feel like the concept itself is even weirder than the horse girl anime. Somehow.
In some respects, it really is, because it's not as many things at once as the horse girl anime is. Like, it's not like that, but it is a lot in a different way.
Yeah.
Where it's just like 2 or 3 things, but they're just by themselves individually so much, and then put together they're even more.
They're even more.
Right? Like, horse girl is like additive, where it's just like, okay, they're girls who are horses, okay, plus they have names based on like real racehorses, okay, plus they're idols, right? And that's like, okay, that's a lot. But then here's the thing, in Hisone to Masatan, it's okay, dragons exist and the government keeps them a secret. Like, okay, I'm on board with this.
Mm-hmm.
They swallow their pilots. Oh no, I hate this. And then it's multiplied by the fact that they transform into jet planes, which is like the worst. That's the worst of the worst. It becomes like exponentially worse.
Well, I think it will take a while before this anime grows on you.
Well, the problem is it's a good anime. I just hate that it's about what it's about, and I'm like I'm not really sure where it's going either, because it looks like they're gearing up to some kind of dragon plane war.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's necessarily where they're going, but like I can't think of another place to go without just kind of leaving it in slice of life fetish territory.
Yeah, I mean they're controlling dragon fighter planes, so they gotta like fight at some point, I guess.
Right, like I feel like the intention here is that they'll stave off some kind of aerial threat, and knowing this show, it'll probably just be a different dragon.
The ultimate dragon.
The ultimate dragon. Well, okay, yeah.
Well, we have to watch until that point.
One of my friends actually said to me, he's just like, the way that you describe it, I almost feel like I want to watch it just to know what it's like. But at the same time, I can't let that be like the second anime ever that I've watched. And I'm just like, no, you really can't.
I mean, you're doing the Lord's work by promoting this anime.
No, don't watch. Well, okay. I can't say don't watch it because it's not bad. It's just bad. That's enough of me yelling about this show. You'll hear complaints about this show again from me probably at the end of the season.
I can't wait.
But this week, AT stands for Apple Tart because we're talking about Gourmet Hound. It's a webtoon which you can get on your phone, and it's by an artist named Leehama. Well, that's not her like real name, but
kidding.
That's her screen name. Leehama sounds like it could be a real name if you kind of split it up into Lee and Hama. But yeah, so before we begin, I wanted to ask what you've been up to. More specifically, because we're talking about a food thing, how did your cheesecake adventure go? Did you do it?
Right. So let's talk about this.
Oh no. Oh dear.
So I got inspired to make those fluffy, jiggly Japanese cheesecakes from like a panel in this webtoon, right? There's one panel where she's eating like a really fluffy Japanese cheesecake, and then the artist drew it all like wiggly, and I was like, oh man, I want that. I want to make
Beautiful.
that. And so then I talked to you about it, and then you were like, yeah, I had a friend who made one in a rice cooker, and it turned out good. And I was like, okay, I kind of want to see how a dessert cooked in a rice cooker will go. Oh, no. So I found a recipe, and it seemed pretty straightforward. And I didn't have the exact type of rice cooker that the chef who made the recipe made, but or the chef who made the recipe had, but he had like they had caveats or like addendums to basically for people who don't have a rice cooker that has a cake setting. Because apparently rice cookers
come with cake settings?
With cake settings. You would think within the name rice cooker itself, it just cooks rice or like, other savory-esque foods related to rice. But
we are truly in the future.
We are in the future where our rice cookers can also make cake.
I mean, I know that it's like a big thing in Japan just to make really like overblown things. Like the reason that jiggly cheesecakes I feel like exist are in part due to like thick pancakes.
Okay.
Where they'll just make pancakes really, really large in a rice cooker.
Huh. Wow. We're just behind on the times.
Well, I know about this.
Well, I'm behind on the times because my rice cooker has a button, and you push, and it cook.
And it cook rice.
Yeah. So, I followed the recipe. I had all the, the right ingredients, whatever. And and I set it to cook. And the author of the recipe stated that once it pops up to cook, you just gotta push down the button again after like 5 minutes, and then it'll start cooking again, because you have to wait for it to kind of basically cool, or else it'll think that it's done already, and it'll pop up again, right? And so I did that, and I think around the 20-minute mark, it says to bake it for 40 minutes. I checked it at 20 minutes, and I was like, the outer edges are kind of starting to brown. Maybe, I don't know. Should I take it out? Should I leave it in? But it was only like half of the time, right? So I was like, I'll just follow the recipe. I don't want it to be like undercooked, right? So like, I cooked it for the full 40 minutes, and then I come back and it does not smell great.
Oh no.
So the end of the recipe says, put a plate on top and then invert it so, you can flip out the cake, right? So I do that, and then the cake lands on the plate with like a solid splat. And I was like,
no.
Oh no. And so then I lift up the rice cooker bowl, and it is just like it has the height of like a normal American cheesecake, right? So it had fluffed up at one point. When I had first checked on it, it had already fluffed up.
No.
But then during the last 20 minutes that I guess I overcooked it, it went back down, right? Like a souffle. And on top of that, because it was inverted, right? Because the cake is technically upside down now, it's just like this black crust.
Oh no.
And then I was like, you know what? It still jiggles technically, even though it's a lot. And so I was like, okay, you know what? The recipe says to let it set in the fridge for at least an hour. And so it was right before I was gonna go to bed anyway. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna have it in the fridge overnight, and the next day I'll try it and see if it turned out okay. So that's what I did tonight. And like, I cut off the burnt crust, obviously, and I cut myself a little slice, and the inside looked okay, right? It didn't look as like smooth and creamy or whatever as I would have imagined, but I was like, okay, whatever. Had a bite of it after I finished my dinner, and the consistency tasted like cottage cheese.
Oh, distressing.
But then it had like it was like, once it enters your mouth, it has like that sharp eggy flavor, but then it goes away like almost immediately, and then you're just left with this bland, purely cake flavor with none of the sugar.
What happened to the cheese?
I don't know. And so
You cooked it into oblivion. It doesn't exist anymore.
And I definitely added sugar, and that's the whole reason you're supposed to let it set instead of like eating it right away, is because the recipe said like, if you eat it right away, it's gonna taste really eggy, so like make sure it sets, and then some of the sweetness will be able to come out. And I was like, cool, well I have it like setting for like a whole day in the fridge.
Oh my gosh.
So I think
Okay.
I don't think I should make a dessert in the rice cooker anymore.
Well,
because
okay. So I think I can recognize and diagnose some of your issues. I think you definitely overcooked it, and I think in overcooking it, you brought out more of the egg flavor. You probably should not have left it in for the full 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, there are many variables in a recipe, and if it looks like it's good, you shouldn't go farther. Like, I've had this issue, and to be fair, I have this issue with hollandaise sauce, and hollandaise sauce is impossible to make. But yeah, I was once doing it where I was like, okay, it's at an okay consistency, but I want it to be a little like, creamier and thicker, so I'm gonna cook it a little bit more, and then it just separates, and I'm like, well, that's fuck my life. But that's just because hollandaise sauce is impossible to make, because you have to emulsify butter and egg yolks without cooking the egg yolks. It's a whole process. Anyway,
that is a lot.
So I think most of your issue might be that you overcooked it. You have an oven, right?
I have an oven, but I wanted to try the rice cooker thing because that sounded cool.
I mean, yeah, and it worked for my friend, so I'm just thinking that you just maybe overcooked it.
I think I should have just taken it out at that 20-minute mark because it looked fluffy and nice.
You should, yeah, that's what you should have done.
Yeah.
I think if you try again, you
No.
try not cooking it for a full 40 minutes, because
I don't want to
obviously,
try it again.
obviously your
and ruin
rice
my
cooker is too strong.
It is the Tiger brand rice cooker.
That is I think I have that brand too, actually.
It's the most reliable one in my experience.
And if you don't want to do that, then what I recommend is that you just make it in the oven like a normal person.
Yeah, I think I definitely don't want to give up on this cake. Like, I definitely want to make it. And I think because this one was bleh, I have to throw it out. I cannot eat it.
Yeah, you're in the pursuit of the perfect fluffy cheesecake.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my fluffy cheesecake story.
Okay.
Aside from the one I ate in my friend's dorm room, which was tasty and fluffy.
Okay.
I went to Japan for like 3 days. 2 summers ago. I went with I went with my family because I was staying with my aunt and my uncle and their kids that live in Korea. So we all took a trip to Japan over the summer, and I was essentially acting as the translator, of course, because I know more than zero, which is more than you can say for the rest of my family. As noted by my uncle, who would just kind of go around and say English very slowly and hope people would understand him.
Oh, great.
I mean, yeah, my uncle's a lot, and his kids can attest to that too.
He's a lot.
He's a lot. He has a lot of dad power. Let's just say that. His dad level is through the roof.
Good.
So we essentially we just stood in line at like the really famous cheesecake place for like half an hour because my aunt really wanted this cheesecake. Like she really wanted this cheesecake, and when we eventually got it, she was like holding on to it. She was like, "This is my baby now."
Aww.
Eventually, we took the cheesecake back to Korea with us, and we had it over the next couple of days.
You ate
so
the
good.
baby?
We had to eat the baby. She wanted to eat the baby. She got the baby for the express purpose of protecting it long enough to eat it.
You ate the baby.
Anyway, that cheesecake was really good.
Okay, well, that's good. It was made by someone who did not, cook it in a rice cooker without knowing what they were doing.
No, it's made by that. It's made by like I think this is the place that like maybe originated the cheesecake, which is why it's so famous.
Oh.
But they have that thing where they just like set out like 18 jiggling cheesecakes, and then they take like a hot iron brand and then they brand all of them.
Bruh. I need to get to that level.
I mean, maybe focus on making it like edible first. You turned into dark matter.
Leave me alone! It was the most unsuccessful cheesecake or cake in general that I've ever made. Like, I'm usually like, cake's my favorite thing to bake, and that was not.
Like, what happened was you're literally the person who's just like, I followed the recipe. What went wrong?
I know what went wrong. Okay. I just hate that it went wrong.
It's okay. You'll get him.
I'll get him. My problem was following the rules. I should have broken them as soon as I opened that rice cooker and saw it was fine.
That's the thing about cooking is you're allowed to break the rules because they're not real.
Yeah.
They're actually just suggestions.
Yeah. They're like kind of like guidelines, like soft guidelines.
Like, I have to change every recipe that I ever make when I look them up because I have an electric stove, and most people who do cooking recipes have like burners, like fire. But
fire,
which is interesting because on one hand I understand because it provides a more even and consistent and better controlling heat. But on the other hand, I feel like the vast majority of people these days have electric stoves. So even though you have to be better at cooking, it makes it a lot harder for your audience. It's weird. It's a really weird problem to have. But I manage. My hardest task is making sure meat comes out well because it's just so difficult to control the heat on an electric stove.
We gotta get you a gas stove.
Get me a gas stove for my birthday and I'll install it in my house.
I'll just casually get you one. And according to my parents who own a gas stove, it's like overall usage is cheaper for them than using an electric stove. Like
Yeah,
in terms
I
of
bet.
utility. Hmm. Let's move on from my cheesecake venture, and we will revisit it when I try again.
I'll ask for weekly updates now.
Oh my god.
It's fine. One day it'll be
It's
like, I
fine.
made the perfect cheesecake, and
Oh, man.
now I won at life. Congratulations, everybody. Goodbye. Peace.
Peace. By then we'll have our anime cooking show.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
One way or another.
Mhm.
We're gonna find a way to do this, and if it involves crowdsourcing and money, then so be it.
we live in separate states, so somehow we need to meet up and cook together.
The problem isn't even that we necessarily live in separate states, it's that we live in two states that are 2 time zones apart. Like, if you lived in Nevada, it would just be, like, really easy.
Yeah.
But if you lived in Oregon, it would be very difficult for me to get to you. But
Yeah.
because you live even farther than that, it's not even fathomable for me to drive anywhere.
We can only fly.
I mean, this is a thing though, which is like California is really big, and some people don't even like process how big it is. Where Los Angeles is like an 8 to 9 hour drive on like an okay day from here where I live.
Yeah.
Like it's just so hard for me to go
small.
anywhere that's not San Francisco.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. Like when I land in Los Angeles for like, you know, the airport or whatever, like I'm shocked at how sprawling it is, and like as we keep getting closer and closer, I'm like, "Oh my gosh. The city keeps getting bigger and bigger."
Dude, it's big. It is large.
Yeah.
Large and in charge. It's the opposite of San Francisco. Because San Francisco is just so small that you will miss it. It's too small. Anyway, let's talk about our thing. So this week we're talking about a webcomic that is called Gourmet Hound. It's about food, but more specifically, it's about a person who has a really good sense of smell, and she has a favorite restaurant, and her grandma was friends with the owner, and then one day the flavor of the restaurant changed, and she is looking for the perfect dish, basically, that brings her lots of joy.
Yeah, she's trying to like reclaim the flavor of this restaurant that basically she grew up with this food. And so the reason why it's so important to her and so dear to her, which we'll like touch into later on, is that she says that it tastes like home. And when the flavor of the restaurant changed, she felt like her home was missing. And because her grandmother has passed away at this point, it also just it feeds into how she's even more, you know, motivated to find what happened to the chefs of this restaurant.
So let's start by talking about the art, because I like it a lot.
I adore it.
It's very cute.
It's super cute, and like anyone who would ever criticize this art probably doesn't know what it's like to have to, because this person updates their comic bi-weekly every Wednesday and Sunday.
Every Wednesday and Sunday. I can't fathom how much work goes into this, because
so much work.
There are like more often than not, there are just like these like full body shots, and I'm just like, wow, that's 3 characters standing in relation to each other with all of their bodies showing. That's so much.
And they look fashionable.
I know. I love that all the characters have like all these different clothes and distinct senses of fashion. It's one of my favorite things.
Yes.
It's one of the things I really like about Sailor Moon is that they have actual clothes instead of just uniforms all the time forever. I mean, they also have uniforms, but
yeah, but they have other stuff in addition to that.
Casual clothes are one of my favorite like tropes in media, like having different senses of fashion, and it's something that you can't necessarily accomplish well in literature without dwelling too much on being kind of pedantic and slow.
Right.
But in a visual medium, it's really important.
For sure.
Right. Because if it's in literature, it's like there's almost never not a reason to like. You have to read into why they're wearing or why they're describing certain clothes because there's just like pacing is an economy that you must use sparingly.
Right.
Let's just say that. No, yeah, I love the art style a lot, and I've been following this artist for a while, and I was looking through her art the other day, trying to figure out when exactly I followed her, but I don't remember. I don't remember.
Was it because of the webtoon?
It wasn't because of the webtoon. I actually remember when the webtoon had like 2 or 3 episodes, and I was like, "Oh, the artist that I like is doing a webtoon." She actually has another webcomic called Flower Pot that I've never read, but is on hiatus.
Oh yeah, I saw
think that
when I
one's
checked
cute
out her
too.
Twitter. Yeah, I saw that she had another one, and I was interested in reading it.
Yeah, but the work is going into Gourmet Hound right now, and there's a lot about it that's like very charming to me. The art style is definitely one of them. The artist has such a unique art style that is it kind of is comfortably cartoony while at the same time being like it's you know what? Okay, so the words that I would use to describe this art style are comfortable and gentle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I can't think of much of a better way to put it than that.
Yeah, I agree. It's
soft. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. We got it.
We got it. It's soft. Sisu, be soft boy.
No, I can only be hard.
Stop.
Only hard.
No.
Listen, I must be hard like my boys Kirishima and Tetsu.
No.
He's so hard. He's made of iron.
No. Me soft cooking boy.
Listen, I'm also a soft cooking boy. I can be both.
You can be both.
Soft cooking boy and hard anime boy. No, there's a lot to like about it, and it feels very much like a webtoon. There are a lot of shots which it's like just a character's expression or face.
Right.
But it flows really well because the paneling is really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the paneling and the pacing feel right on target for what kind of story they want to tell. And
Plus the visuals of the food. 10 out of 10. Would eat with my mouth. would eat with my mouth if possible, but because not, with brain. Only brain.
I like that the author like during the Q&A part of the webtoon says that they're not actually like, you know, a professional chef or anything like that. They just really like cooking shows.
I mean, honestly, same. Like I would say I'm an okay cook, but I have a great passion for food, and I appreciate that comes through because I too watch too many cooking shows.
Yeah, I like that rather than focusing. There's a bit of drama in terms of like, you know, like the chef egos and stuff like that, but more than that type of process, it's more focused on like the dynamics of people and not so much like the drama necessarily. Like you might see on like, I don't know, like all those real dramatic cooking shows like Hell's Kitchen and stuff.
The pace of the comic actually is like right up my alley because it's very it doesn't meander a lot. It's kind of slice of lifey in tone. Yeah. But at the end of the day, they're still making progress towards a goal. Yes. And there are elements of drama to it, but it doesn't linger in the drama necessarily. Yeah. It exists as an aspect of the comic, but not the defining genre of it.
Right. And I like that there is like an overarching mystery that we have to figure out with the main character. Happens. Yeah, I want to know what happens. And so that's another motivating factor for you to read this comic is like, yeah, of course it's kind of slice of lifey in how you just kind of like gradually enjoy and go along with the ride, but there is a definite conclusion that she's going to draw by the end of this series, and it's gonna be good. I feel it.
Yeah. I'm so far I have been satisfied with the direction that the comic has been going. But before we stray too far away from art, I want to talk about the great way that food is depicted visually. And this is something that I think I've actually mentioned before on the podcast, but I just don't remember where oh, you know what? It was probably the Shokugeki cast. Huh?
That's exactly what I was thinking. It was probably doing the Shokugeki one.
That's actually probably exactly where it was. Yeah. No, just the way that food is like taste specifically is depicted visually is really great.
Yes.
Because I get a sense of how it would taste, not just because, you know, I know how food tastes and I think about how food tastes together a lot.
Yeah.
That's definitely part of it. But the sort of colors and textures that we get visually convey a lot of what it's like to eat a food.
Right.
Maybe not exactly taste wise, but like emotionally, the reception of the food.
Right.
That's really
like
important.
I love that. Like, of course the artist put like so much effort into drawing the food, but then also like she's really good at conveying expressions. And so like the main character, Lucy, you love watching her eat because she so clearly enjoys it that it makes you feel like you're living vicariously through her.
God, you know what? That's one of my greatest like appreciations is people who really like something, and watching them really enjoy that thing is really gratifying. Like I follow a lot of like food channels where people just go around to like different countries and eat food, and watching them just sort of experience the pure joy of eating to me is like really, really fun and nice and important. Yeah, and like to the point, like I get that with this.
Yeah, me too.
Do you want to talk about the story?
Sure. So as we stated in the beginning, it's about this main character. Her name is Lucy Fuji, and she is trying to reclaim the flavor of this restaurant that she's been to since she was a little girl, called Dimanche, where her grandmother was best friends with the owner, Chef Bartlett. And you know, she grew up, you know, eating the chef's food and stuff like that. But one day the flavor of the restaurant changes, and now she's on a quest to find where the chefs of that restaurant disappeared to, and see which of these chefs was responsible for that special home tasting, you know, flavor that she's missed.
She's looking for the perfect dish, but she just doesn't remember what it is.
Yeah. Well, so like there were several chefs in the kitchen at that time, but she doesn't know who, and so she manages through a series of fun coincidences to meet an ex-chef of that kitchen who left before the time when she noticed that the flavor changed. So she basically automatically ruled these two chefs that she meets out of that, you know, potential list. But they provide her with a list of the chefs that they knew from that time when they left, and where they knew, and the ones that they knew, like in terms of like locations, like which locations they know. But the one that they absolutely don't know is where Chef Bartlett went, and he mysteriously, you know, just up and disappeared without a single trace at some point during the restaurant's, you know, history. And that was what caused the fallout of the entire kitchen's staff, and that was what caused them all to go their separate ways. So yeah, Lucy is on her way to going down this list and trying to find a way to eat the cooking of these amazing chefs who would probably never cook for her because she is poor child. And
This poor child.
Yeah, these chefs cater to very, very rich restaurants, and you know their cooking is top notch because this restaurant's, you know, that's the kind of crowd that it served. And she would only be able to eat there, like, you know, once per year, maybe, you know, whatever. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I like it a lot because it's a very sort of simple and clear goal.
Yeah.
That allows for a lot of fun exploration along the way. It's not overly complicated, I would say, and that I think a lot of webcomics have the potential to be caught up in that, where they can get too ambitious, and they can get too, I guess, like sidetracked almost, right? Like it never feels like we're in a situation where like we're not doing anything important, right? Like every moment feels like we're moving towards something, or we're displaying something, and that's really great to me. I am a sucker for a story like this, and I like Tall Handsome Grandpa. And I'm so here for the slow burn romance. I am just a sucker for it anytime that it happens, and I feel it in my guts. It's hitting me. It's giving me that delicious slow burn. I feel like it's warming me from the inside out.
I also agree that aside from the restaurant mystery, that's another motivating factor to read this webtoon, because you don't know how this romance is going to develop, but you know that this webtoon is classified in the romance genre. Like, the author, made sure of that. So there is going to be a romance, and it's developing.
Oh, I just want it.
You just want it.
It's so good. They're so good. Yeah. Slow burn romance aside, there's a couple of reasons why this is so this is so up my alley. Like, everything about it speaks to me.
Yeah.
And it's why I made you read it.
Yeah, it also speaks to me, so I agree.
You got that slow burn romance? It's not like they hate each other. They're just. It's so good.
I like that they're not like that typical like rah, 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 like always like fighting, but they actually like each other type of thing. It's like they do bicker, but they also like kind of tease each other, and they're kind of like, they act like how I imagine most people would.
It's true. I mean, I am admittedly a sucker for hate to friend to love, but.
Yeah, I mean, I am too, but I guess I've seen it so often that I like that this dynamic is a little gentler than that. It's like,
yeah, I mean, it's refreshing, and it also fits the tone of the comic a lot better. Yeah, and it's just so nice. Like, it's just so nice.
I remember when she posted like her concept art about this webtoon that they did have a dynamic more similar to that, where they would bicker pretty viciously, like constantly, but then I guess as she developed the story and stuff like that, or the characters, then it became what it is now.
Yeah, I think it's a very soft show with some hard themes. It's about food, of course.
Yeah,
super up my alley.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about that. But there's lots of dogs.
Oh my god, the dogs!
There's so many dogs, and I love all of them.
They're so good.
And also the comedy's right up my alley. It is my particular brand of humor, because it's a lot of sort of outrageous statements and then almost like underwhelming kind of deadpan responses or reactions. And I think the expression work is like really great. Because
it's really good. Like, even just like the placement of like the speech bubbles, and then like how like she'll like bold like the straight man comment, and it's just like really, I'm like, oh, I love it. Like, I can hear their voices in my head, like arguing back and forth or whatever.
No, the writing of the comic itself is actually quite good.
Yeah.
The comedy of it really tends to land a lot, especially with me, because like I mentioned, like I'm a sucker for this kind of thing. There's a lot of it's sort of like dry deadpan humor, but I'm a sucker for it. I fall for it every time. I'm just like, tall handsome grandpa.
Yeah, and they also have a pun here and there.
All their names are puns on food.
All their names are puns. And it's so good.
As somebody who likes stories with puns in them and names that mean things, it's pulling double duty, and I love it. Listen, it's pulling double duty, and I love it. There's a lot of love and care put into the webcomic, obviously, but there's stuff that really shows that there's like a little attention to detail. And part of this is like the little aside comments that happen that are very like manga-esque.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like the actual dialogue and then little like side comments about it, like in the margins of the speech bubble. It's very shoujo manga.
Yeah.
But I like that too. But also just like recognition of like background characters and like stuff like that, where like Lucy is just like, "Hello, everybody. Hello,
Everybody.
oh, let's be friends." I love it.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
There's a lot to like about it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about characters, because I think that's one of the areas that this webcomic really shines.
Yes.
I have a lot of appreciation for, and you know, it kind of goes without saying, like as a comic that is, you know, more or less a passion project by an independent creator, you get to see a lot more diversity in the casting, I guess, in the character designs themselves, you know, from race to sexuality to body type.
Yeah, it's great, and it's also like they're each in themselves like so memorable. Like, you list me like a name from any character in this webtoon and I'll picture them exactly, which does not happen for me in hardly any other series that I watch or read. You know, the names and faces start blending together, all like, I'll remember the face but I won't remember the name, whereas in here it's like instantly I know who it is you're talking about.
And I think part of that is because of the love and care that goes into each character. Like, it really feels like, you know, even if a character isn't like a main character, or even, you know, a secondary character, right? They're memorable because it feels like they're not trivial. You know,
right.
They matter.
Right.
And because I feel like a lot of times in sort of big anime, it's very possible for a lot of characters to get buried or lost.
Yeah.
You know, because they're not as important, right? They don't have as much weight to them because they're not as consequential to the story. But, you know, because in a webcomic like this, you know, there's a lot of the update schedule, you know, while it's like kind of rigorous, right? You know, every Wednesday and Sunday is a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of attention paid to the characters and each one of them and how they're crafted and how they're depicted. And I'm glad that we get stuff like this because, you know, professional sort of stuff, I feel like a lot of the times lags behind the independent stuff when it comes to things like representation and things like, you know, nuanced character portrayal. Like, I love Walt's family.
Yes.
Like, not only because it's just lesbians, but because okay, hear me out. Hear me out.
Here we go.
But because they're likable, they're adults, and they have like a realistic family dynamic where it's just like, hey, I hope it's okay that like I ate that thing in the fridge, and Walt's like, I'm gonna die, and Walt's other mom is just like, you're tearing this family apart.
Like, there was literally only one scene with them, and you already like just automatically like fall in love with them because they're so good. Like,
already very charming.
Yes.
So impossibly charming. Yeah. It never feels to me like there's a character that is meant to be likable that isn't.
Yeah.
They're all just, and I think a large part of this is like sincerity, right? There's like a very sincere effort put in to make sure that these people are charming and nice and fun, but in different ways where they're not all the same.
Right.
Like, they act like people. And I mean, that's, I think there is some merit to be had to situations where, you know, you have something where people don't necessarily act like people, but it's still a good story, or the characters are still good. Like, I think realisticness is kind of overvalued as a trait, when in reality, you know, it's more things like consistency and, you know, thematic stuff, and, you know, why a character is there and how they're acting matters in this way or that way. But I think for a series like this, it's an asset for them to act like real people.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it moves the story forward. It adds more charm, more vitality to the world that they're in. Even though it's like, Yeah, and it's like modern day society, you know, humdrum life, but like you feel so invested in what's going on because you love these characters so much.
I mean, it's also just like it feels more real because and in a large part because of like the diversity of the character designs.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, exactly. It feels colorful. And
right. It's reflective of actual experiences like living in real life where you're just like, yeah, that was I know like 8 lesbians and like 16 gay people. That's just how it be, you know?
How it be.
It's just how it be. Like not everybody I talk to is a white person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really glad for it. And I think there's a large part of this is a very concerted effort from somebody who themselves is underrepresented in media. And like that's why it's so important to have, you know, even beyond diverse like casting and diverse character design, it's important to have, you know, diverse creators.
Yes. Yeah. They shed perspective on things that you wouldn't necessarily think about, but once you see it, you're like, oh, yeah, there isn't much media about this or that, right? And I enjoy it.
And I hope you know that anytime anything happens from now on, I'm gonna say to you, you're tearing this family apart.
Oh my god. Why can't it be you tearing this family apart?
Because I'm always tearing the family apart. That's normal.
But when I do it, it's a rarity and therefore must be pointed out.
It's a rarity. If you're like the rock of the family, like you're the stable ground. If you start tearing the family apart, we got nowhere to go.
Okay.
I'll
take that as a part compliment.
You're our rock, Renu. Our rock. Rock. You're our mom friend. That's it. That's what it is. Except you're Papa, so you're Papa.
I'm Papa friend.
Papa friend.
Pop mom friend.
All right, Papa friend. Play catch with me. I'm lonely. I want to talk about baseball, and I don't actually. Care about
you don't even
want
to watch sports anime. Like, how are you gonna actually play a sport?
I think that there is some merit to sports anime, even though I don't like them, in that they are more interesting to me than regular sports. Because like there's a concern. I mean, and this is an interesting thing, which is like traditional sports themselves do have this meta layer of story building to them, where a narrative is kind of weaved together about a certain team, and it's like interesting or cool when like something happens, right? And this is something that was taken to the extreme with newer sports like wrestling. Like professional wrestling is just dramatic theater with punching and fighting. I guess not punching because they're wrestling, but
you mean like the WWE Raw stuff?
Right. Like WWE and Raw are just dramatic theater with more violence. And then of course, you know, we get a glimpse more into it with, you know, burgeoning esports where teams build rivalries and they trade players and they trade like smack talk, and it's great. And I like it. I understand now like very much why people like sports. And I understood it conceptually before. This is a thing I will say over and over again. I understood conceptually why people like sports, but I get it a lot more now that I'm watching stuff like Overwatch League, because I'm like, oh, each of those players has like roles, and it would be kind of weird if they like strayed away from them, which is why it's weird that Seoul decided to have their main healer be a tank. But okay, that's aside from the point. It's weird. But like, you know, you get invested in these players and their stories and how they perform,
right? And
ultimately, it ends up being very satisfying. And it also means that you also want to just do that thing that they're doing. Right? Like, I never understood necessarily why people wanted to play football all the time, but now I understand because I play Overwatch for like 3 or 4 hours every day.
It was just you had to find the sport that called to you, and for you it was an esport.
It was a video game, which means that society will frown.
I mean, they're starting to play esports in like the regular bars and stuff too. Yeah, they're killing it, and so I think it's gradually being more and more accepted.
They actually had two of the players from the Houston Outlaws on the Today Show.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, Houston.
Oh, Houston. No, yeah. There's those boys are doing good work. Those Houston boys. Those good Houston boys. But yeah. So do you have a favorite character?
Ooh.
Can you choose one out of all of the good children?
Oh no, you're asking me to choose between my kids.
I know.
I think because she so resembles a very dear friend of mine, I really like Bree.
Oh, Bree's so good.
Yeah, she's like a grown-up version. Well, I mean, my friend is grown up, but like a even more adult, like
a grown
30s.
up version of my like mid to like late 20s friend.
She's late 20s friend, but Bree is in her 30s or is 30, and so maybe if my friend was in her 30s, then she would be more like Bree.
That's fair.
Have more of her life together. But yeah, I really like Bree. I really love the main characters, Lucy and then Graham. I love Lemon. Okay, let's talk about Lemon.
Okay, yeah, sure. If you want to.
I mean, there isn't much to say other than he's freaking cute. And then the fact that Lucy got him a little bandana with eggs on it.
Eggs on it. Oh, it's so good.
So cute. And then he texts her like, why would you get a dog named Lemon a bandana with eggs on it?
You're gonna think he's named Egg. Now, having said that, I want to get a dog, name him Egg, and give him a lemon bandana.
That'd be so good.
It's like, what? Hey, okay, first of all, why'd you name your dog Egg? And I'll like shrug. And second of all, why does your dog named Egg have a bandana with lemons on it? Oh, haven't you heard about Gourmet Hound?
And
they'll be like, Nani?
Nani?
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, I do actually really love all the characters, even like the minor background characters, because they do, like we talked about earlier, they all get their own special treatment, and so it's good. I love it. Do you have any favoritos?
It's so hard for me to choose. I don't know why I asked this question when I can't answer it. I think that my favorites are the main characters, and I couldn't choose between them because I love my like hardworking sad boy Graham and my strong girl Lucy. She's just so strong. She's broke a door.
Strong.
She just broke a door. Just like, hey, oops. That was honestly one of my favorite scenes when she breaks the door in and he comes down. He's like, "Did you break my door down?" And he's just got that expression on his face. It's just like, what?
Yeah. Like she's just like standing there. She's like, there was a fire, and then she just has the door handle in her hand, and she's like, also, I think I broke your door.
I thought there was an old person trapped in here.
Yeah.
I love that she calls him Gramps. I think it's very cute.
I love that they keep up with the joke.
Also, yeah, the tall, handsome grandpa joke.
Yes.
It comes back so many times. I love it. So I love the depiction of the tall, handsome grandpa, too, in, like, Joanna and Walt's, like, imaginations of
fantastic.
Just, would you like a piece of candy?
Round head and long legs for days.
He's just so long. And then they see him and they're just like, that's a handsome man. What are you talking about? You know he's only like 29 and you're still calling him a grandpa?
Yeah. She's like, but his hair.
Yeah, it's you know what? It's just because of his hair. He just looks like an old person. I love that he was like a rebellious boy with cartilage piercings.
But I like that his hair was bleached only because he lost a bet.
Yeah, exactly. It's very real. That's so real.
Yeah.
I had some of the people in the hall bet on who would win the Super Bowl, and one of them lost and had to dye her hair green.
Aww.
It didn't turn out very green, I don't think. I think whatever happened with the dye was just like, it just kind of looked brown.
Oh, did she like dye it at home? I imagine.
No, she dyed it in the dorms.
Oh, okay, that's even worse.
Well, my roommate actually won the bet, so he bought the die, and it just didn't turn out well, which is unfortunate. But oh well.
I mean,
I guess in some ways you dodge a bullet there. Yeah, I'm very about all the characters. Like I said, they're like all written very well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of care put into them, and this is like a thing where thematically I'm very into all of the things that this webcomic is doing, because there's a lot of, I feel like a lot of times when somebody wants to write a story, they can kind of get caught up in the minutia of the story, where it's just like, I want this character and I want them to do this and this and this. And at the end of the day, they're not really thinking about like why they're making the story. And like, this isn't to say you can't make a meaningful story without thinking about the kind of themes that you want to explore, but just that it's a lot easier to, if you do.
Yeah, you got to think about like why is this story important for you to tell specifically?
Right. Like this is a story about food, but it's a story about all of the ways in which food affects relationships and people, and how it brings them together and drives them apart.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that happens with Olive when we talk about Olive.
I love Olive.
She's so precious, and I feel for her as somebody who also feels like they just have to take care of everything.
Yeah, me too.
And that everything has to be perfect.
Yeah.
She's very relatable.
She's super relatable. And she's so round and happy.
She's so happy. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Like, she just wants to make people happy, and that hits very close to home.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that, where we get a scene, like a flashback, where her older sister Pepper has come home from college and has eaten her cooking and is like crying, and is just like, it's like, why are you crying? Is it too spicy? And she's like, no, it's just I missed home, and that really hit home for me in a lot of ways.
Me too.
Okay, I accidentally made a pun there. But it really resonated with me, honestly, where it was just like, food as this conception of home, of comfort and of like familiarness.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously, like, I'm finishing up essentially my first year away from home.
Right.
And I don't really get homesick. So this isn't a problem I have as much, because like my family isn't necessarily like super emotionally close to begin with.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like conceptually I understand, and like I emotionally it resonates with me on a level that is very meaningful. Like I honestly felt like I felt that emotion. I was like, oh yeah.
It's so like I was shocked to see it identified into pictures and words, like something that I've always known my whole life, but didn't put into words until reading this webtoon, right? And it hit home for me in terms of like why I like food so much and why I think it's so important, not necessarily just because survival or whatever, right? Of course that's important, but then also like, yeah, it reminds you of your family, of eating at home around the table, and the taste it brings you right back to those moments. And I know like the people in my life who also really enjoy food also come from similar backgrounds, where it's like, yeah, I mean, not everything's perfect, but they would eat together and they would eat around a meal that was very lovingly crafted by, someone in the family.
Right. And this I think is probably something that comes from the only real times that my family like hangs out with each other is if we go out to dinner, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what's binding us. That I think speaks to most people.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of food as comfort in this home.
Right.
And I really appreciate that, like, like Olive's arc is about this, about food as family and as comfort.
Right.
With Lucy, it's very similar,
Mm-hmm.
but in a way, it's also like her family dynamic, where her like father and her grandfather couldn't really enjoy a lot of food because they had such strong senses of smell, and it was like overpowering. I like that that's leveraged in a way that feels meaningful, where she's just like, I wanted to be someone who appreciates and enjoys food because they couldn't. And it speaks it speaks with a lot of sincerity to it.
Yeah, I loved learning that about her because before that, like her keen sense of smell or whatever, like it felt like, I mean, it was just like a quirk of her personality or her
Webtoon
body.
magic,
Right? And then you actually learn like the backstory and why and how she reacts certain ways about it, right? Like how Graham feels so guilty about using her sense of smell to find the ring, and how she explains about like how she was kind of like used for it, that kind of thing, and doesn't feel super great, and explains about her grandfather and father and all that. I don't know, it's awesome. And I, as like a tangent to the food as home theme, it reminded me of Spirited Away and how Miyazaki frequently treats food like sometimes it's out of comfort, right? And then he also shows examples where it's shown to be like a symbol of greed and excessiveness. So it can be either or.
Yeah, and there's kind of this like duality between Lucy and Graham, where like there's kind of the surface level, like obviously like, oh, she has a very good sense of smell and he doesn't really have like any at all because of his like injury.
Right.
Then you have like what food kind of like means to them, where Lucy is somebody who can't, like, she doesn't necessarily want to leverage her talents because she's not like interested in cooking necessarily, but in food.
Right.
Like she kind of comes out and says like, people are asking me like, why aren't you doing this or that with your talents, right? And it's like, I don't want to do that, and it is, it feels like that. I think like that hits very close for me personally, because like I get a lot of questions about why are you a literature major, because it's like you have all these like interests like food. You were good at math in high school. It's like, yeah, I was good at math, but I didn't like it, right?
Sure.
And it's just like, but you like video games, why aren't you in the video game major?
Right.
I mean, one of those is like, I didn't know it existed. The second one is I again don't like math and I don't want to do computer science. And like 3, I just think it would be more valuable, like in general, for me to be a lit major.
Sure.
But yeah,
I mean, it's not any different than like telling a tall person like, why don't you play basketball, like that kind of thing.
Exactly. Like, yeah, and it's like there's that where, and Lucy is somebody who's not necessarily using her talents for something that seems applicable,
right?
And Graham kind of is the other way, where he at some point was using his talents in a way that was because he was really good at cooking, or he's really good at cooking still, and they remark upon how good his like technical skill is, even though he was so young, right? And that that eventually ends up kind of being like, I guess, his downfall. It's what eventually ends up hurting him.
Right. Yeah, it is so interesting to see that dynamic, like how Lucy, for not leveraging her talent or her innate skill, is seen as a waste, right? That's like, it's such a waste that you're not a chef. It's such a waste that you're not a sommelier, like that kind of stuff. And then for Graham, it's like, yeah, he actually does use his talent in the industry, and then he's seen as like being the star child and like the envy of people's eye, like all the other chefs, and that also like brings him a lot of hate.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of very realistic views of exceptionalism.
Yeah.
Where it feels like, and this is something that there's a quote in Sangatsu no Lion, which we'll have to watch at some point because it's brilliant and beautiful and gorgeous.
I've watched the whole first season. I'm working on season 2 right now.
Okay. All right. But yeah, like where there's a very important part where it's just like, you're just like fucking around because you're afraid of seeing where the bounds of your ability goes.
Right.
And that is okay. That's too real.
That's
is
so
too
freaking real.
Like this is the reason that I don't attach myself to anything too strongly, especially in Overwatch, where I'm just like, I'll play whatever because I'm afraid that I'll just be a bad player. Like I'll just put in all the work and I'll just be a bad player. But and it's like, obviously they're partly unfounded, but obviously they're partly real, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what if I come to hate this thing, or what if because I'm so good at this thing, people just don't like me, right?
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
it's a very real struggle to have.
It's so difficult. And it's like, yeah, I mean, as you get older, you kind of stop caring about what the people around you think, and you basically start doing things purely because you love them regardless of what people think. But that struggle getting there, like some people who are like twice my age or 3 times my age still struggle with that. Like that's an emotional hurdle that I think everyone comes across eventually.
So this idea of exceptionalism as othering, I think, is really important. And I think to some extent that might be the root of why Chef Bartlett went away. Obviously, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
That's a mystery. I hope it's a mystery that gets solved.
I'm sure it will.
I'm sure it will. But yeah, like that to me reads as what might have happened. In a lot of ways, it's like kind of what's behind the latest seasons of Shokugeki. Food fascist dictator man, demon lord is like, I will destroy this world that cast away my precious what the fuck is his name? Joichiro. My precious Joichiro senpai. I will cast it into the abyss and create a new world of gourmet cuisine.
Basically, exceptionalism causes the creation of evil supervillains.
Well, I don't know about evil supervillains. I just think it's a source of stress, and people might not realize that it's a source of stress. And sure. I think there's a very kind of real approach to that. I also just appreciate that it's in a lot of ways about emotional and physical trauma and how one deals with that, right? Lucy is looking for the chef at Dimanche because she's in a lot of ways trying to cope with the death of her grandmother. Whereas Graham has to cope with not being able to do what he's best at, right? Like he's not as effective at cooking anymore because of this thing that happened, and that is the result of emotional stress that was happening like at the restaurant itself. So there's a lot of exploration of like emotional turbulence and trauma and coping. Like there's a lot of coping. Also, I love the scene at the beginning when she's chopping up the onions, and it's like, I'm just crying because of the onions.
I like how it goes up later and she shoves the bag of onions in her face.
She's just like, actually, the onions hurt. These are now mostly onion tears. It's charming. I love it. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the role of indie creators in art. We did touch on this, but I think in a lot of ways it's really important for people like people of diverse backgrounds to create things, right? This is the idea of like we have to make our own if we want to see ourselves. Yeah.
TLDR, we need more.
We need more. If you are a person, make a thing because it's important.
Yes, your perspective is important.
And I'm gonna be honest, one of my favorite things about this, about like webcomics and sort of independent creations in general, is that there's no need to be coy. We in this shit for the real. Listen, I love anime and mangoes as much as the next person. But God, if I had a penny for every time I've been queer baited, I would have enough money to fly to Japan and make an entire animation about like gay people.
I think there's a difference between like being subtle with the build of the romance or the expression of the romance versus like actually baiting people.
I think so too, right? Like, and this is in a large part a cultural difference where Japan deals with a lot of subtext, and at the same time, we've learned, but they don't have to be.
They don't have to.
They just do. And it sucks if you're like someone who's looking for representation and that's like the only thing that you seem to get, which is like this coy subtext, right? Like I love that we get to just have two mothers and it's just a normal thing, right? Like they read as like a family, like a like a quote unquote normal family. It's just like, you're tearing this family apart. Like that's fucking funny. And that's like so real to how families act.
Yeah, I love it, and I even loved reading the comments who were like, "Wait, so which one is his mom?" And then the slow realization of, "Oh, they're both his mom." I love this.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. Like they were like, "Did the author make a typo?" And it's like, "Oh no."
Oh no, it's real.
I get it now.
It's
we need more.
That's a thing that's very important. It's a very and I don't like. I sometimes feel like kind of weird about recommending something based on like diversity, I guess, because it really is very much based on a lot of like different factors, which sort of coincide with each other. But it's a very intersectional comic. The characters aren't just one thing, right? Like,
right.
This is like one. Like, these are Walt's like mothers. They are both women of color, and they're gay for each other. Right, and it's not like a big deal, right? Because the story is not about that. But at the same time, it's not subtext, and it's not coy, and it's not invisible.
Right, it just is, which I really appreciate, because like generally when shows present this, they limelight it in a way that it's just like, oh, look at this special case, like look at this.
Look at this.
Yeah, exactly. And it shouldn't be like that. Right? Like these kinds of topics that are underrepresented shouldn't be like necessarily like put in a special like little spotlight like all the time, right? Like to look at like hey, look at how inclusive our show is because we included this, right? It should just feel natural.
Yeah, and that's a big part of why this works, is because it does feel natural. It feels just like, it feels as though this is just an aspect of the world. It is a reflection of the world that we live in.
Right.
And that is
Yeah, I mean, I can understand, like, in some cases, it is particular to, or I guess necessary to spotlight these issues, like, in terms of, like, advocacy, right? You would, of course, want to spotlight, like, the topic at hand. But, like, in a world like this, in a story like this, it feels good, and it feels right to just have these topics and diverse, things happening in the world just exist as they are.
In a lot of ways, it's mainstream media tends to lag behind independent creators when it comes to this sort of thing, and that's mostly because of the way that mainstream media tends to work. Like this is the kind of place that you want to look if you're looking for things like representation or like sensitivity, I guess, just like anything that looks like real life. To a larger extent than you'll find in most other kinds of media.
Right, exactly.
Right, and like of course, like all credit to the author, all credit to Leehama.
Oh, absolutely.
Because she obviously understands why that's important. Why it's important to have this be like a normalized thing, and at the same time understands the feeling of being othered.
Right.
That's very important to me, and I really appreciate that that's a thing, because like it speaks to me personally, where I'm just like, yeah.
I love it because I feel like sometimes people stray away from normalizing these types of scenarios because they feel like it will lose whatever it is that makes it special, but that's not the case at all, right? Like the way that Leehama like treats it is like, yeah, like these people, like they're special, and they have their own identities, and they have their own very lovely and charming dynamics, but they also exist within the space of this world, and they fit right in, right? Like it just feels right.
Yeah, they got stuff to do.
Yeah. Stuff to do, things to eat.
I think that's probably it. Like I think that's all we want to say about it. Question mark? Anything else?
Yeah, I want to tell people, read it if you love food and diversity and lovely characters and then lovely story.
I agree. If you want to read a webcomic, read this. And the best part about it is you can read it on your phone.
Yeah, it's foodie. If you want to read it, you can read it on your phone, you can read it on your computer. It updates every Wednesday and Sunday. And I'm excited. I'm excited to read more.
I would say that this is a story that, like, if you like comfortable food stories with a little bit of drama in there.
Just a little bit.
It always feels like the characters are motivated by something, and that it goes a long way in creating a compelling story that doesn't feel like it's meandering.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if like you're the kind of person that wants like a food centric thing, this is a good one to go to. It's not as like competition focused as Shokugeki.
Yeah,
it's a lot more aligned with things like Sweetness and Lightning, but there's there's a lot of, I guess, there's just a lot of character. It's a very unique thing. There's nothing quite like it actually, and that's like a big thing that I would say for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll get a unique story that feels good when you read it, and it doesn't feel like a difficult read. Like you never feel like you're slogging through like, oh, they're living their lives, all slice of life. He's so slow or whatever. Like it has a good pacing, and once you're in it, the chapters will legit fly by. Like I read the entirety of it in a week, in a couple of days.
It was really funny. I messaged you about it, and I was like,
yes.
Okay, let's do this one.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I don't know. Okay, the art's pretty cute.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if I can catch up like before we have to record. And then you're like, well, read a chapter and give it a try. And by the time I messaged you, like I started one chapter, I had already gotten halfway through. I read like 20 chapters in one sitting.
It's so good. It's so good. It's very good. It's a very fast read. There's not like too much of it out right now. It's only like 40 some chapters, and each of them isn't super long, and you can read it on your phone, so there's no reason not to be, unless you like don't like what you heard in this podcast. Which, if that's the case, we're doing our jobs wrong or right, I guess.
We're informing the public regardless of how they feel.
Right, like some people might just not like food stories.
Exactly, in which case they'll be like, okay, well, I'll avoid this.
Or slow burn shoujo romance, but I'm really into all of those things.
Right.
That's all I have to say about Gourmet Hound.
Gourmet Hound.
Gourmet Hound. You look it up on the internet and follow the creator because she's great.
She's great.
Yeah, okay. So there's a little bit of housekeeping that we have to do. We should probably make some things clear within the actual podcast. It updates every other Wednesday, probably.
You said that you would want to change the day every now and then, right?
Well, there's kind of an allowance thing where I have, like, my schedule kind of aligns, unfortunately, with Wednesday. I want it to be on Wednesdays, but it kind of, sometimes it gets away from me. Like, sometimes there's just a lot of work to do by Wednesday, and I'll be forced to push it.
Would you be more comfortable with another day?
No, I think it just caught me off guard the last two times that I tried it. So this time, like, we're definitely gonna get out on Wednesday because I don't have all of those things to do this week, and then in 2 weeks we'll see where we are. If there's a change, we'll announce it on Twitter. You can just find updates on Twitter at Absolute Cast.
At Absolute Cast.
At Absolute Cast. And if there's anything permanent that we're changing about it, we'll announce it in the actual show too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what are you up to this week, and where can we find you on the internet?
I am going to try making that cheesecake again.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
I will tell you all about it in the next podcast.
Oh boy.
Otherwise, I have a convention at the end of the month again, so I'll be preparing for that, making lots of artus. On Twitter, I'm on Tumblr and Twitch, all at SwanDrawn. Also Facebook at the same name. And then I have an Instagram, swan.drawn.
Cool.
I'm gonna make that cheesecake and I'm gonna photograph it for you when it turns out dandy.
You're gonna ace that cheesecake.
Ace it. And I'm gonna brand it.
Okay. All right, then. You're gonna make a custom brand just for your cheesecakes.
Just for my cheesecake.
Well, if you do make a good cheesecake, be sure to send me a picture because I want to know. I want to see it.
Okay. Maybe I'll send you like a little recording and jiggle it.
Yeah, you just you shake it for me, okay?
Yeah, I'll shake it for you.
and I'll like judge your cheesecake. I'll just be like,
This sounds really bad.
I'll judge your cheese. It'll be like, yes, the jiggle factor is an 8 out of 10. The color, I would give it a solid 7. But the taste, I'm sure, is an impeccable 10 if I was there to eat it.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, so where can we find you?
You can find me on all the places at Literal Soup. As always, this week we have a labor strike. It is the largest Californian labor, I think, and they're striking across all the UCs. Or no, it's the University of California's largest labor union. That's what it is. They're striking across basically all the UCs for 3 days. Today was the first day, which is why I had to go pick up rations.
Oh.
But it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, like that's just a thing that's happening.
Yeah, there have been a lot of teacher strikes lately.
Yeah, there's been a lot of labor strikes lately because like wages and benefits haven't really been going up at all.
Yeah, it's freaking about time that the teachers took a stand and, like, you know, they shouldn't have to, honestly.
They shouldn't have to, you're right. But it is important, and that's the reason I'm not going to class, because I'm not going to cross a picket line even conceptually.
Well, I hope it works out for the teachers' favor, because it's bullcrap what they have to put up with.
Yeah, I hope it goes well. I hope they manage to negotiate something that is beneficial for the workers, because it's important. It's important.
Yeah.
What else am I doing this week? Probably not really anything. Like, it's week 6, I think, of school. Got like 4 more, like a month or so before finals. I'm just kind of doing school. Just kind of getting into it. Days are flying by, and I don't even like what the hell am I doing?
Sometimes I feel like that too.
I do not know. Well, whatever.
Well, it's good that we keep ourselves busy, and, like, you know, like basically by the time that I feel like, oh, I'm done with this podcast episode, like, it's already time to record the next one.
Yeah, but I mean, let's put a lot of work into it. Like, all I have to do is splice it together.
No.
You can tell we're getting better at doing this because I have to cut less and less. Which means less work for me and more for you still. Or the same amount of work for you. So it's more in relation to me.
I actually think I've been putting more work into it because I've been wanting to get more ambitious with the videos.
See, this is why I chose this job and not that one.
Like, I like how in the beginning, right, I was very grateful that you were doing the audio, because I was like, I don't want to have to listen to my voice. I'll just do the videos. But I have to listen to the audio anyway for the videos. Yeah, but I can't escape it.
Here's the thing, though, Renna. You get to listen to the nice audio. I have to, like, make sure that the sound dynamics work so that whenever you or I, like, crack up, it doesn't break.
Yeah. I do appreciate the work that you put into making sure everything is equalized.
Okay, well, that's it. Akechigoro, eat your fucking heart out.
Dun, 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 eat at the Gourmet Hound. No, eat at the Gourmet Hound. Don't eat his heart.
Eat Akechigoro's heart.
No!
He can't eat it alone. You have to help him.
No!
Fly me to the